all this stuff about the Confederate flag that people talk about today and argue, you just have to ask a simple test. If their flag was there in 1865 or 1861, fine, let them have it. If their flag, as most of the Southern flags, came after 1954, then I'm happy to get rid of it, because we know what happened in 1954. But people would tell you this was part of the Confederate legacy and this flag dates back to our heritage. Nonsense! This is a response to Brown versus Board of Education and an attempt to continue exactly what the Civil War was attempting to stop. Not just slavery, but this idea of states' rights and nullification. All history is written usually by the victors, and it's the first time in which the history was written by the losers. And if you don't believe that, then you just look at Birth of a Nation and Gone with the Wind, two popular histories that have it exactly upside down. That celebrate the Ku Klux Klan, that say that the Civil War wasn't about slavery, that it was about states' rights and other just complete fabrications of the imagination. And so the South carried on. They had the memory of loss. The North, which fought that war, as Shelby Foote said, with one arm tied behind its back, went on to conquer the rest of the continent and to develop into the sort of mighty continental nation, while the South sort of wallowed in the backwater that it would necessarily become, having put all its chips in the corner of chattel slavery in a country that had proclaimed 65 years before that all men were created equal, and languished there, but developed this rich literature, both in very, very positive ways and then in the negative ones that I mentioned. Somehow the North forgot that all of those statues on the squares, all of the sacrifice of Northern soldiers was forgotten. And I think it's always been there, this curiosity about this moment in our past where, paradoxically, in order to become one, before the war we said the United States are, which is grammatically correct, and now we say the United States is, which is actually ungrammatically incorrect, is ungrammatical. And I was interested in making a film about that transformation and to remind people of that paradox of needing to divide oneself in two in order to become one. And I think the interest was always there. People just didn't know enough about it. And it was good to see that people in the North could take an ownership of a war that I think had been unfairly, or at least appropriated by the South to our general detriment. I mean, it's a great story. It's a classic American story. If you think about the Civil War, you sort of turn it in a different way, and you forget all the battle stuff, and you forget all the other things. It's really the triumph of the middle class is what the Civil War is about. The old aristocracy, represented by Robert E. Lee, is what vanishes at the end of the Civil War. What's replaced by it are these Midwesterners, this Abraham Lincoln guy, and this Ulysses S. Grant, and this William Tecumseh Sherman, who got sent back from the war because he was crazy. You know, and in fact, he said, Sherman said famously of Grant, he said, he stood by me when I was crazy, and I stood by him when he was drunk. And Shelby Foote said to me when I asked him about Grant, he said, Grant had what you call 4 o'clock in the morning courage. That meant you could wake him up at 4 o'clock in the morning and tell him that the enemy had turned his right flank, and he'd be as cool as a cucumber. And he said, to give you an example of how well Grant could concentrate, and this is what it's about, it's application of attention. He said he'd be writing at a desk, writing some military orders, and he'd see something across the room that he wanted. He'd get up and he'd never leave the sitting down position. He'd sort of waddle over to the thing and get it and come back. So it's almost, there was no physical memory of where he was. There was only this whatever overweening ambition and purpose and drive and concentration. And that's what made him so wonderful in war and in marriage. He had a wonderful, wonderful marriage. In fact, it was said that the only time he drank was when nothing was going on in the war and when his wife wasn't around.